What's up, guys, and welcome to the Truth with Jenn podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Litchfield. Much like you, I wear many hats. I'm a business owner, coach, speaker, wife, mom, friend, and much more. In this podcast, I will teach you how to love yourself, respect yourself, and self-validate so that you can make your own decisions. Listen, y'all, it's time to do the damn thing. This is The Truth with Jenn. Hey guys, I would love to be your transformational coach to help you get the results you desire. If you're interested in working together one-on-one, I'm offering you a free 30-minute coaching consultation call to see if we're a good fit for one another. To get your free coaching consultation call scheduled, send me an email at jen@jenlitchfield.com, and my team and I will be sure to get back with you within 48 hours. I look forward to being your coach and helping you grow. Cheers. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of The Truth with Jenn. On today's show, we will be talking about a topic I think a lot of people can relate to, and it is the topic of struggling with pregnancy and then exploring other options such as in vitro and just the journey that can take you down. To help me discuss this topic, I couldn't think of anyone better than my lovely, beautiful sister-in-law, Miss Virginia Litchfield. Hello, Virginia. Thank you for being on today.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate, before we dive into it, into actually struggling with pregnancy and what those emotions are like and how you were able to work through them, I want to just first say I you being willing to talk about it and really reopen those emotions, maybe like Pandora's box. Luckily, I'm going to go ahead and just ruin the ending for you. Luckily, she did end up having two beautiful children that I get to be lucky enough to call my niece and nephew. So there is hope in this story. There is a lot of emotions and a lot of rawness. However, my intent behind this is to, one, talk about a topic that I personally didn't have to go through, but I know that a lot of my friends are. And I see how impactful it is on them and just how hard and emotional it's just so trying on themselves, their marriage. It's just a lot. And so I just want to have someone speak on that who has had a personal experience. And then two is to give you hope. That's the point of kind of fast forwarding to the end, is to let you know that it's not the end all be all. Anytime that you hear information from the doctor, or if a few different ways haven't worked for you, that there's still hope. And that's the goal of this, and the intent behind this episode is just to open your heart back up to the idea, if that's something you're interested in, and provide healing and just options for you, right? Like, if anything, just hope, right, Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%.
So before we just go straight to it, can you give us a little bit of a background on you? What was it like being Miss Virginia growing up? Where did you live, and what were you interested in when you were younger?
So I actually grew up in Virginia. I was from Virginia. Yes, Virginia from Virginia. That's where I met my husband, and we now live in Washington State. We've lived here for a little over 3 years now. And I grew up going to school and course geek, I guess, getting good grades and just doing the normal kind of things. I was not athletic. I didn't really get into too much trouble. And then went away to college for a semester. And then kind of just started my life.
What'd you study?
So I started out as a communications major, and then I switched over to psychology, which is what I ultimately got my degree in.
Very nice, very nice. And then you said that you met your now husband in Virginia. So how did you know he was the one?
So I was never one to be alone, I guess. I didn't necessarily jump from serious relationship to serious relationship, but I definitely had my fair share of boyfriends, and most of them were bad. I mean, I dated some nice guys here and there that didn't last because of me. At that point, I wasn't ready. But, when you go through dating crappy guys, when you find a good one, you know that you've got a good one and you're not ready to let it go ever. So I was way more sure that he was the one than he was ever sure that I was the one.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
That's so interesting. That's so
Oh, yeah.
funny. Russell always says the reverse. So she's my sister-in-law, so we married into the same family, right? So our husbands are brothers, if you will. And that's interesting. That's funny. Especially because Tony's like, I've never experienced him feel uncertain about you, but that's probably a good thing because I met him at your engagement party.
Well, yeah, by the time he proposed, he was definitely certain. I mean, he's not the type of guy to actually make that type of commitment until he really was. But, he took a lot longer to get there than I did, I think. Because he'd only had one real girlfriend before me, and they were together for like 10 months. That was it.
Yeah.
That's
Meanwhile, serial dater over here, out breaking hearts.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just very different, histories.
Yeah. But nonetheless, like it led y'all to the right place at the right time, right? And I personally would like to thank you for allowing him to stick around. You said you dated some good ones here and there, but you just weren't ready yet for yourself. And so I'm glad that you allowed yourself to have a good man such as Tony. So that worked out. I'm glad you weren't like, skirt, I need another dirt bag, please.
Yeah. I mean, we like to joke around because, we went to middle and high school together. So we actually knew each other long before we actually started dating, but we never really hung out a lot or obviously dated. And I'm kind of glad that we didn't, because I think if we had and ever dated way back then, I don't know that we ever would have gotten back together and started dating as adults.
Yeah. I don't feel like the Litchfield boys revisit the past.
No. They do not.
Once it's a wrap, it's a wrap,
Mm-hmm.
skirt. So, yeah. So, okay. So then you guys got engaged and then you had a beautiful wedding. And we're going to insert a picture of y'all. You looked so hot. He looked so hot. It just was a fun wedding. It was a very fun wedding.
It was definitely epic. That's for sure.
At what point did you guys actually? We're gonna shift gears here, right? We're gonna get to the real stuff now. At what point did you guys actually start your pregnancy journey and start actively trying to have kids?
Immediately.
After getting married?
Yeah, we knew we wanted to start immediately. So I mean, I immediately came off the birth control as soon as we got married.
Pulled the goalie.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously waited till after the honeymoon.
It's good. It's good.
But yeah, we knew we wanted to start trying. I did know that there was a possibility it could be difficult for us from the get-go, and I had made him aware of that before we got married.
When did you feel it was necessary to share that with him, right? And the reason I asked that is because we were just talking, like, Tony wasn't the type of man to actually propose until he was ready. And I've thought about this often, about like how the guy, like in their head, by the time they engage, propose, dude, it's a wrap. Like they might as well, you know what I mean? Like they might as well just have already walked down the aisle, like, because they have to be that committed. Whereas we just get that. It's like we shift places in a way. Mm-hmm. I think that that's maybe why they're less involved in the wedding process, because they just surrender. Like they've already ran a marathon in their head, emotional marathon. So but for you to share something that vulnerable, you're really having to admit that, okay, I see this going somewhere further and serious, right? Like, so you're putting yourself out there. So at what point was it that you felt it was necessary to ask or to share that with him? And what gave you the courage, I guess, too?
Well, had we had both discussed our wants and desires for marriage and kids and that kind of thing very early on in the relationship, because it was important to us both that we were on the same page before moving forward. I mean, before moving in together, we had made sure that we were aligned. Yeah. In that aspect. I mean, down to how many kids we wanted. And when, like
age-wise?
What's that?
Like age-wise? Like when? You said and when you were going to have kids.
Like, did we want to be married for 10 years before we had kids? Or did we want to, were we willing to have kids shortly thereafter, kind of thing? Because I think that's important too. For some people, they want to enjoy a few years of married life together and do that. And some people don't. And neither way is wrong. It's what works for you and your family dynamic and your relationship.
That's so true. I love that point because it's like setting expectations, right? So that you're not like one's right off the boat from the honeymoon, ready to, get pregnant, and then the other one's like, hang on, like, can we enjoy the moments? Because then you're like, what did I just do? Like, should we even have gotten married? You know what I mean? Like, that could spiral quickly. So that's an important point, like, is to set the expectation, and that's just another something to discuss that will help. It helps you get out ahead of it, right? To keep it cohesive, keep you on the same page, and just kind of work out the kinks, because you can find a happy median versus like an abrupt, wait, you lied to me, or you feel, whatever it is, toward animosity, whatever it is. So,
yeah, the resentment that you're not getting what you wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we had those discussions. I want to say it was either before or shortly thereafter, around the time we, defined the relationship.
You went from talking to
official
in a relationship on Facebook. Yeah. Okay. Serious stuff here.
Somewhere around that time frame. And then I want to say it was around the time that we started getting more serious, that the topic of my issues kind of came up. I broached that topic.
Do you mind sharing what the issues were?
So I had struggled with endometriosis as long as I can remember. Not that I knew what it was until 2010 was when I was formally diagnosed. But it was something I'd always struggled with. And then
you cramp harder, or?
Oh yeah, very heavy cycles. I'd be down for a whole day at least, if not two, every month, out of school or work. Dang. Generally throwing up. Couldn't function.
Dang.
And doctors had suggested birth control from the time I was a teenager to help control it. Back then, people didn't really understand endometriosis. My doctors hadn't suggested that could have been a diagnosis. So my parents didn't think that was really a thing. So, doctors even basically are saying, oh, you're just being a baby. You're complaining about nothing. So I had to wait until I was 18 to even begin to treat myself for the pain.
That seems very that's an old school way of thinking. Was there any other issues that you were concerned with when you guys started, you knew later on in the future you were going to start trying to get pregnant? Was there anything else you shared with them or felt the need to share with them?
Yeah. So before Tony and I had gotten together, my previous boyfriend that I was with, it was actually the boyfriend I was with when I had the formal diagnosis of endometriosis. Now, when you're diagnosed with endometriosis, the only way they can formally diagnose it is through laparoscopic surgery, where they remove all of the adhesions, because that's what endometriosis is. It's scar tissue that adheres to all kinds of random places inside your abdomen. And so they go in and they remove it at the same time. And that's how they diagnose it, is because they see it, that it's there, and they remove it. I had that surgery while I was with this boyfriend that I had. And once you have the surgery, your fertility does increase. And my particular doctor at the time wanted me off of birth control for 3 months, because he wanted to see how it affected my cycles, and to see what he needed to do basically after that. I ended up getting pregnant, unfortunately, with that boyfriend, and it was an ectopic pregnancy. I thought I had.
For anybody who doesn't know, what does that mean?
It means that instead of a viable pregnancy where where it attaches in your uterus where it's supposed to, it actually attaches inside your fallopian tube and begins to grow there. It will never be a viable pregnancy, because you cannot remove it from your fallopian tube and attach it into your uterus. That's not scientifically possible.
It's not like it's going to pass through like it should.
No, because it's already implanted. It just implants in the wrong place and begins to grow there. And most of the time, your body automatically will start rejecting it, and you miscarry. And a lot of times you just never know that you have it. It just turns out like a normal miscarriage. In my case, and what can happen a lot of times, is it will continue to grow there, but your fallopian tube doesn't expand like your uterus does. So it ruptures.
Is that dangerous?
Yes, very.
So did you end up having that tube removed, or did it even matter at that point?
So they ended up not removing that tube because I begged them to try and save it at that point. I mean, at that point, I was 24.
Was that going to hurt your chances moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, down to one fallopian tube, that completely hurts your chances of ever having a kid again. And I knew I wanted children in the future, and I was devastated.
Sure.
Here I wasn't planning on having kids at that moment.
Yeah, maybe not with this asshole, but you're like in the far, like when I know one day I'm gonna wake up and break up with this asshole. So right. When that day comes, I would like to have beautiful children with a nice man. I get that. I can see that. So then, okay, so you shared all of that with your boyfriend at the time, but now a husband. How did he respond to the information that, hey, we might have some difficulty getting pregnant should later on in the future, if this is where it goes with us, we might have some difficulty. How did he respond to that?
I mean, he was super supportive. He didn't want to be negative. He didn't want to assume that we would have problems until we did, which I can completely understand. He basically wanted to cross that bridge when we came to it.
That's fair.
And that is fair.
And it didn't scare him off.
No.
Yeah.
My point was just, one of his biggest things before even thinking about getting married that he always had said, his drawbacks to wanting to get married at all was he had seen too many of his friends get divorced because once they got married, their spouse completely changed. And I really wanted to make sure that he didn't ever feel like he was not getting what he signed up for with me. So I never wanted him to feel like he got a bait and switch.
That's why you shared early on.
Yeah.
I think that's the right call. Because at the end of the day, if it is going to go there, it's not like you don't want to deceive someone. And so if that's information that you yourself would want to know, which it would be, right?
Mhm.
You would, I think that's right. That's integrity, no matter how vulnerable it is. Even if he's like, dude, why do you even talk about this? I don't want to have, what are you talking about? Like you're a side piece. What are you doing? No, I'm just kidding. I knew you were already more than that, but you know what I mean? Nonetheless, there's vulnerability in that. There's vulnerability in, hey, even if I know he cares about me, he loves me, and we have dabbled in this future talk, this is still like, he still has to want to take the risk. He has to, his love for me has to supersede the risk even, right? So it's like, does him wanting a 100% chance to have kids trump his love for me? And that's a real ass question though. I mean, there's some people that want nothing more than to have children in the world. And again, there's no right or wrong. It's just preference. And so I think that, kind of early on in life, if you just kind of assume, I think we just have the assumption of, yes, I do. No, maybe I don't. But I feel like a lot of people that don't want kids don't want to verbalize that because, the whole selfish shame game people try and do to people. Like our only purpose in life is to procreate. Or, like what the? Anyways. But to that point is, I can appreciate where you don't want to have pulled the wool over his eyes and he didn't get what he signed up for. I do think that a lot of women would struggle with the fact that it's supposed to, absolutely, the one thing we can do right in the world is to give birth to children. Yep. And I just want to offer that if you don't want to have kids, that's okay. If you do want to have kids, that's okay. If you get it the natural way, that's okay. If you get it the adoption, that's okay. Like however it comes, it is perfect in its time. But the last thing we need to do as women is put any additional pressure on ourselves and to diminish our own value based off of whether or not our body can have a baby.
And I think that was the other point that I really wanted to make with having that conversation with him was adoption something that he would be willing to do? That was also another conversation we needed to have, in my opinion, before we got married. Because, if we ended up having issues with infertility, which to me was a very real possibility, and we couldn't naturally have a child, and we both still wanted children, was adoption something that he would be interested in? Was that something that he was open to, or was that something he was completely closed off to? And if he was completely closed off to it, that's fine. But we needed to have that conversation beforehand. So that way,
y'all are both protected.
Yeah. Either I knew and I was okay with that going into the marriage and could, handle that once we got that far. Or if I wasn't okay with that, I could make that decision before we got married.
Yeah, I love that. I love that angle. I never even would have thought of that, and I love to have this conversation because, maybe some people are listening to this right now that maybe they'll have, who knows, like maybe something comes up later on in life. Now that they know to have that on their list of questions, right? Like that as options, and for themselves as a woman. Like I love that you thought about that. Like, hey, there is other options for me too. Like there's protection and decisions for me to make in this as well, versus I'm broken,
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's my mindset going into it, just because I felt so strongly how you felt on that at the river. But we can't. I mean, let's. But we'll stick a pin in that for a second. Okay, so you told him, and he was open to it, and then y'all moved forward. So then, when you guys so you pulled the goalie. When was it that? How long had y'all been actually trying naturally prior to you guys thinking, hey, maybe we need to look into something else?
Gosh, to be honest, maybe, I think it was a year before we tried Clomid.
1 year. 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 1
Even though at that point the doctor had already said she didn't think that was our issue, so she was just kind of letting us do it just to do it. Um, and so we only did that once. Because what Clomid does is it makes you basically super ovulate. So you just produce more, not embryos, you produce more eggs, basically. So it gives you a better chance of actually ending up with an embryo. But she didn't think that was my issue. And it wasn't. So that didn't work for us. And all it did was make me super crazy for the month that we did it.
So y'all tried for a year. You were on that for a month. So we're a year and 1 month in. What would you say about that time between trying and for this phase of the journey, right? The pregnancy journey, prior to in vitro? What would you say? How are you feeling during it as far as a couple goes? Like, were y'all on the same page? Did you feel like you were sharing the same emotions?
Most of the time, yes. I think there were definitely times where we weren't. Um, because there were times where, one of us may have been ready to give up where the other one wasn't. And it was, the other one kind of pulled the other one along.
Yeah.
And kind of, I wouldn't say begged, but um, talked maybe the other one into continuing to try. And, that's not always a good thing for everybody. In our case, I think if either one of us really was ready to, like, we needed to stop, then the other one would have been respectful of that. Um, I think we just both needed a little, like, in each instance, we both just needed that kind of push to keep moving forward. Um, and so it worked out. But, I think ultimately, yeah, we both were really dealing with grief with, every time we lost one. We both were dealing with despair. I think there were things that I was dealing with that he wasn't necessarily because, as a woman, you have these expectations that are socially put on yourself, and that you then try and put on yourself too, you know, that I dealt with a lot.
Sure.
Um, you know, you, as a woman and as a wife, you're supposed to be able to provide your husband with a child. And so, sorry. When you start feeling like you're letting your partner down, that gets tough.
Yeah. So my heart goes out to you and anyone who has experienced anything even close to that. Like, because I don't even have an understanding of, like when you said you'd watch the numbers and then watch it go down to zero. Like that I didn't even know what that meant, but it just made me really sad on the inside because I know that your number is supposed to be high in pregnancy. There's something you're supposed to keep climbing and doubling and tripling and quadrupling. And so, I commend you and Tony and anyone else for being able to endure such high roller coaster of emotions that I'll never be able to fathom. And when you said just a typical miscarriage, like that alone for me, I haven't had one, and that alone was like that's hard to hear. As a woman and as your sister is like,
Yeah.
damn, I just really didn't have any clue. Like I love you and I love him and I was there for y'all and I try to show love but at the end of the day, it just goes to show like even the people that are closest to you, we have no idea what y'all are actually going through. And so in those times, when Did you ever feel supported by someone outside of Tony? And if so, what is it specifically made you feel supported in the right, respectful, not blowing smoke up your ass way?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think some of the biggest things were like when both you and Nicole were talking about wanting to try and uh, discuss with your significant others or look into possibly surrogacy for us or something like that, that type of gesture. I mean, just even the thinking about it is so powerful because, that's just um, something like that. I mean, um, even though we ultimately, didn't or wouldn't do it, just the idea of wanting to try and do what you can to help, or thinking of trying to think of what you can do to help. I mean, that's significant to somebody going through something, because otherwise everybody just, all they can do is just look at you with these puppy dog eyes like, oh, I'm so sorry.
So I meant it too.
No, you did.
I meant it so hard. Like I'm saying this right now. I did not enjoy being pregnant. I didn't enjoy being pregnant, and I've learned since then, and I've also given myself permission to say that out loud, because I did feel like I felt like I was being insensitive to people who do struggle with being pregnant, because we didn't struggle. In fact, it was a surprise, and luckily it worked out. But and so, I think that it's important for women to hear too. It's like, even if you go and you fight to get this pregnancy, and then if you have a tough time, I mean, you're paying thousands of dollars in vitro, and it's a lot you're putting your body through. Don't feel like an asshole or like a bad mom if you don't enjoy every single minute of every single day of every single second of being pregnant. Like, I just want to publicly say that I struggled being pregnant. I struggled with the weight gain. I struggled with the sleepiness. I struggled with, it was a lot. I didn't feel like I was really at home with my body. The second time around was a little bit easier for me, just because I wasn't so fearful of ruining this unknown child's life, right? Like, that second mom confidence was strong. But I just feel like that's important to say. But especially if you are, I feel like we're taught, and it's embedded in us and just pounded into us, like, be grateful for what you have, right? And that there's an undertone of scarcity mentality in that. And there's an undertone of, if you complain at all or have any qualms about this or any discomfort, that you aren't grateful, like you're unappreciative about this pregnancy, about this healthy child inside of you. And I think that it's important for us all to be able to take a step back and detach ourselves from people's emotions, first and foremost, but also their experience. Like, what I say doesn't mean that I'm trying to dismiss the fact that you are having trouble getting pregnant, or that you or also don't judge it as if I'm going to be a terrible mom. And that just is another pressure and another narrative that's running in our society, is, as women, is even the ones that are not struggling to get pregnant, they're filling themselves with self-doubt and stress. The ones that are doing everything they can and putting themselves through so much, such as you guys, just they don't feel good enough. It's this not feeling good enough bullshit that truly, in my heart of hearts, I believe, puts additional stress on our body that doesn't allow it to run at optimal whatever, precision. It doesn't even allow us to give us a chance to do what we can do. Should everybody just back the up, honestly. So that's how I feel about that. Y'all decided on in vitro. That was a large expense. That was an investment, right?
About
At the
20 grand.
20 grand. And that was going to give you two tries, if I remember correctly, right?
No, that was just the one try, with some embryos frozen.
You committed to the in vitro. You wanted to do it. What happened after that?
So by the time we did in vitro, I think at that point I think that was 4 miscarriages in. Just early, they call them chemical pregnancies, when you have early miscarriages. And at that point, we were told our best chances were because they didn't know why I was having them. So they told us that our best chances were to just avoid my fallopian tubes altogether. And the only way to do that was in vitro fertilization. So we decided to go through with it. We used everything we had, and it was actually the money I got from my settlement from my car accident for my hip injury. And so we were able to go through with it. They implanted 2 embryos. And it was, once they do it, you have 2 weeks, basically. I mean, just like a normal time frame, to wait and find out if it took. And so we had our 2-week wait, and it did not work. We got the call that I was not pregnant. And at that point, we thought that was the end of our journey, that we were done.
What? So when you guys came to the river, because that was that 4th of July, right? So I'd flown to North Carolina to go to my in-laws' river house in North Carolina. I already said that. And by river house, Texas people, there's dolphins in this river. Like it's like 9 miles across. Like you ride jet skis in this river. It's not like a throw a ladder and shimmy across. Like when they told me they had a jet ski down there, I'm like, they're gonna bottom out. Why are they? But no, there's dolphins. Anyways, so when we were down there, me and Riley were down there. I just remember you guys coming, and you guys had just found out, and Mom and Dad were like wondering if you were still gonna come down. So what in that moment when you got that news, did y'all just like embrace one another?
When we got the call, I was actually by myself. I was actually in the drive-through line at Chick-fil-A. Fun place to be. So I got home, and I told Tony that I got the call, and I had the food, and we just kind of slunk into each other's arms.
I'm so sorry.
I mean, it was what it was.
Yeah. What made y'all come to the river still?
The same thing that made us continue on every time we had a miscarriage.
Which was?
You just, that's what you do. I mean, if you sit there and wallow, there's no point in sitting and wallowing. I mean, yes, you have to process it, and you have to be able to grieve and be upset, but you also can't stop your life.
Very true.
Because that defeats the whole purpose. I mean, when I look back and I look at the things surrounding the other miscarriages, I mean, the first one was New York City for your birthday, and I had pneumonia, and we were still in New York City. There was one that was the night before Megan's wedding in Texas. And at that point, nobody even there except for the bride knew I was pregnant. So, and Tony wasn't there. I had nobody to tell.
I remember seeing you because it was in Texas.
Yeah, because the next day, right after Megan's wedding, was Abby's bachelorette party.
Yeah.
And so I drove and met you at Abby's bachelorette party. And I partied with you and Abby for the bachelorette party. And then went to your guys' house.
That's crazy, Virginia, that like we live in separate states, but then that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm thankful to have been able to share that with you. And then obviously because of being on the other side, right? Like with Arya and Xander, that's just kind of crazy to reflect back and look at that. Like, so this interview almost had to happen. You know what I mean? I just want to touch on my outside perspective of y'all's response after the in vitro didn't take. And then we can move on to the big life changes, and then finally the end of the happy story, like how you end up getting the good news, right? I just remember just feeling mom and dad obviously felt so defeated for you guys, right? And we are very close as a family, and so like I think we were all feeling it, like, you know. I just remember laying on the dock with you and on the floaties, and just like I just felt I could feel your pain, you know. And even then at the time, I thought y'all had another try. This whole time, I thought y'all paid $30,000 and y'all had 2 tries. But I remember mom saying specifically that I remember dad being very negative about the fact that if it was going to take, the first try was going to be the one. If it was going to take, it would be the first time. And so that the second time essentially wasn't going to be as good of an option or a percentage of a high success rate as the second try. So I even in that moment, I didn't know you didn't have a second try.
Well, I guess technically we did. So what it was is we did still have 2 embryos frozen. They were not as good quality as the 2 that were implanted that first try. But with the money that we paid, that didn't include a second transplant of those 2 frozen embryos. So we had to pay a storage fee every month for the 2 frozen embryos until such time as we wanted to try and transplant the other 2. And then we would have had to pay another, I want to say it was like $5,000 or something like that to transplant the other 2 if we wanted to do another try. And that was just for the transplant fee. That didn't include another round of medications, which is normally several thousand.
When you guys, when that didn't take, I remember you saying like, screw this. We're just going to get drunk and party and we'll just travel the world. Like you just were like, I could feel you as a protective mechanism for your own soul, shutting it down. Like you were literally closing off that option, that feeling, that emotion. So at what point did you guys decide, hey, like it's time for a change? Because Tony took a lateral move across the country. Mm-hmm. What was it? Was it just the rawness and did you just need to change the scenery? Was that what brought it to a head? Was the in vitro being unsuccessful?
The move across country actually didn't have anything to do with the pregnancies. That was completely work related. It was just a good opportunity that he had been presented with. And he'd actually been presented with it several years before that. We'd just been kind of milling it over. And I guess to a certain extent, yeah, it was just a good time to take it. And And we did end up going ahead, and after that in vitro failed, we finally were able to convince them. I had been begging OBGYNs to do another endometriosis surgery since we started trying, and nobody would do it. And so after the failed round of IVF, they finally agreed to do another endometriosis surgery. And so they did that September. And so, mind you, we were planning on moving. We'd already planned on moving at that point because July happened, the IVF. Then we planned to move shortly thereafter, I think. And then we convinced them to do the endometriosis surgery in September. I had that surgery. We flew out here to look at houses in the end of October, beginning of November. And while we were out here looking at houses, we were at Jeff and Katrina's house, which is their cousins, or our cousins. And I started having a very familiar pain. And I said, this isn't good. I sent Tony to go get a pregnancy test. And it was positive. So off to the emergency room we went. And they pretty much just brushed me off and sent me on my merry way. So we flew home. And they started tracking my numbers back down. And they were going down very, very slowly, which should have been a red flag. I kept telling them it was a red flag. And they didn't listen to me. Sure enough, we were driving back from my grandparents' house in Northern Virginia back to our house after Thanksgiving. And I was driving the car, and about halfway through the trip, the pain got so bad I couldn't drive anymore. And Tony had to drive the rest of the way. And we called the doctor and said, basically, I'm bedridden. You got to do something. The numbers are coming down way too slow. This is an ectopic, I'm telling you. And she still didn't believe me. She said, okay, well, maybe I'll give you the methotrexate, which is a shot of basically a low dose of chemo that they use to kill off any remaining tissue. I said, no, you need to do the surgery. She eventually agreed and scheduled it for 4 days later. So 4 days later, I had the surgery to remove my fallopian tube that had ruptured. Like I told them.
Yeah, I mean, that's just crazy. That's crazy that they just don't listen. They don't want to, for whatever reason. And I'm sorry. I hate that for you. Like for them not to validate, to not take your word. It's your body.
Mm-hmm.
Like what that, but so let's end on a high note. All right. So you guys moved across country, and then, and then at what point, when you found out you were pregnant with Miss Aria, how did that come about? What was that? How did that come, do you think? Why is it like after all this angst and heartache and stress and money and just all of it, like what is it that do you feel there was something different in yourself and maybe even in Tony and the environment in which you guys had, the new environment you had created for yourself? Was there something to do with that?
Well, so they took that tube out when they did the ectopic removal, and that was actually the same tube that I'd had the first ectopic in. So that was the bad tube. And then we moved across country. I want to say it was the next cycle I got pregnant with Aria after that, which was always crazy to me because we normally never got pregnant that quickly after a miscarriage in the first place. The only reason I tested earlier than I normally did that month. And the only reason I did was because I was getting ready to buy a plane ticket to go to a friend's bachelorette party in South Carolina somewhere. And before I bought the plane ticket, I just wanted to make sure I really wasn't pregnant, so that way I wasn't going to be pregnant and miserable partying. And yeah, that didn't happen, obviously, which I'm well happy about. But I believe that things happen for a reason, and a lot of times I look at it like if we had, let's say the IVF had worked back in June, I'd have been pregnant. I don't think we would have taken the job. I don't think Tony would have taken the job and uprooted us to move across country. I think he'd have still been working in Virginia.
Are you happier living there in Seattle?
We're happier out here. He's happier in his job out here. He has been promoted into positions that he wouldn't have had the opportunity back in Virginia. We are in a home that I don't believe we would have the opportunity to be living in back in Virginia.
Sure.
We've created a nice life out here that I don't think we would quite be at back in Virginia yet. And so, I truly believe that, things happen for a reason. And I look back to and think maybe I did go through all of the pain to help other people too. I have to think that there are reasons for everything. We have the children we have for a reason. They are amazing kids, the 2 kids that we have.
Yes, they are.
We had Aria, and after Aria, we thought about not having a second child because I did suffer from pretty severe postpartum depression at first, and I did get that under control. And then we decided that if we had even one miscarriage afterwards, we were going to be done. We could not put ourselves through 4 years of that again. Mm. And so we started almost immediately again, trying. And I think we both were mentally prepared to quickly have another miscarriage and then put the idea of a second child to bed. And that is not the way that works.
Nope. And here's Mr. Xander.
Yeah.
He's like, I got life to live and I'm coming through you.
Yeah. Our 2 kids are 13 months apart for everybody listening.
Our twins, right?
Yeah.
I think there's 11 months. Well, I love that you guys persevered, and I love that your relationship and marriage was able to endure through all of those hardships. There's nothing more intimate and more serious and more charged of a subject for me and Russell than the decisions with the kids and emotions surrounding miscarriages and emotions surrounding all of that, whether to go, whether to stop, whether to, like, it's I could see where it's a push-pull because you're, at the end of the day, you are trying to honor your partner's feelings, but we all have our own individual feelings and emotions as well. And so to be able to be entitled to those and create the space and lack of resentment and I guess the support that's necessary to let them have their moment and not belittle it. And you know what I mean? Like, I think that y'all made it through a lot that most people wouldn't, Y'all's love for one another is obviously rings true.
It's very, very true. I mean, infertility 100%, I feel like, makes or breaks couples all the time, every time. And I 100% feel like it brought us closer together. We are a team that is.
Y'all are great parents, and y'all. It's so enjoyable to watch you with the kids. So, last question for you would be: is there anything that I didn't ask you, or we didn't touch on that you feel you would like to share about just the pregnancy journey and Vitro journey?
I think that for anyone going through it, it's important that they find their outlet. And everybody's going to be different.
What do you mean by outlet?
So because it's so emotionally difficult, you need something. You really do. You have to find something that you can focus the negative energy into. Otherwise, it will eat you alive.
What was your thing?
Art.
What was Tony's thing?
You'd have to ask him.
Yeah.
Mine, I had two really. I art, and then listening to music helped me a lot. But art also really helped me.
Yeah.
But I mean, some people, running might be their thing to focus the negative energy and get it in art. I mean, running or boxing or, whatever. But I feel like that really, really is a very important aspect of going through the process, because you cannot bottle it. You cannot keep it, and you cannot handle it without being able to release it somewhere.
Sure.
Too much. It's just too much.
Yes. And that's anyone and everyone in any subject, but especially this, and especially like something that's in regards to your body, right? I mean, you can't keep that pent up stress and anger and cortisol and resentment. You can't do that, because then you might be having issues getting pregnant, but then all of a sudden now you're having issues with migraines, you're having issues with, you know what I mean? Like it can completely spiral out of control and manifest in many, many different ways. Sometimes divorce, sometimes you get fired, like whatever, right? And so you can't hang on to that. And I would just like to say that give your partner that space to outlet on their own as an individual outlet in a scenario like this, because you know what I mean? Because otherwise you're so worried about the other person. I'm sure you have empathy for that. You're tied to them. You don't want to fall apart in front of them, because then like you're trying to be strong, or just whatever subject it is. I think that as partners, that's something that we could coexist better together and feel more intimate and come back together as more whole if you allow them that space.
And Tony 100% did. I mean, he knew that I needed it, and he was 100% supportive of me whenever I needed to do that.
Yeah.
Go do it.
Well, I love you and adore you, Virginia. You shared things that I did not know, and I'm not even sure. I hope that I've honored this subject, but you threw me some curveballs that I just, the way in which it rolled off your tongue just was like, shit, man, like it put a different, shined a new light on just how strong you are, and how strong any woman and man is to go through this, and whether it is the outcome is two beautiful children such as Xander and Aria. I hope that for you. Just hold true to yourself, and don't have your value tied up on being able to have a child, and hold true to one another. And because at the end of the day, you guys came together for reasons more than just co-creating a kid, like going halvesies on a kid, right there, because otherwise you wouldn't want that so bad. You would, because you want to create that kid because it's going to be an amazing ass kid. Like, it's like the best of you, the best of them. Like, hell yeah. Like, you handpicked your spouse. Like, you agreed to that. So, of course, you want to create something and share it with the world and watch it grow. Like, and so,
and at the end of the day, we had fun together.
Yeah.
We enjoyed being together.
Yeah.
And, yes, we knew we had a lot of love to give a child and a lot to give a child, but we also had a lot of love to give each other.
Yes. Yeah. It shows. It shows.
And so, yeah, that's, we were okay at the end of it. At the very end of the journey, we were okay. We were okay with if that's how it comes down. that's the way it shakes out.
And I think that's the surrender piece that we all have to like do is remove the resistance in control, remove the resistance in it not already being the way you want it to be. Just everywhere, anywhere, in any area. But I believe truly in this area as well, like when you're trying to get pregnant. And
I mean, to be honest, even after you get pregnant, you don't have control over when the baby's born, how the pregnancy goes. To be honest, it's a preparation for what's to come because you don't have control over any of it. I mean, my pregnancies were definitely not the way that I would have wanted them to go. I mean, I was on bed rest with contractions the whole last month or more with Xander, and then he came 5 weeks early. You don't have control. They do what they want.
Yeah, they do. Well, I love you very much. I appreciate you sharing. And I can't wait to embed beautiful photos of those sweet babies in there. And yeah, you're a great mom. I want you to hear that out loud in the universe. Like, you're a great mom.
Well, I love you, and you give me inspiration and a good role model to look after.
Thank you. I will talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks, guys, for listening. You can find my podcast and additional episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and any other major audio platforms. To watch the video from the show, you can find it on my Facebook page, which is Jennifer Litchfield, or on my YouTube channel, Jenn Litchfield. And don't forget JENN, 2 N's. If you like the message of my podcast, please go and subscribe, like, and review so we can continue spreading the message of self-love. And please go follow your girl on Instagram at Jenn Litchfield. Thanks, guys. I'll catch you next time.